My name is Maralee Burnett. I am your astrologer, back with the messages for the week of September 15th, which is the week before the new moon solar eclipse. And that means it's going to be extremely intense, especially since this eclipse happens at 29 degrees of Virgo, the very last degree. And the last degree of any sign is extremely intense. And I would expect nothing less from a solar eclipse anyway, but this one will be supercharged. So this is a new beginning, a critical new beginning that happens in the sign of Virgo that we all want to be prepared for. But I'm only going to touch on that briefly this week, and then I'm going to record a separate video for that breakdown, because there is so much going on in the week leading up to it that I want to make sure that we give it time and that I don't rush through this. There is a lot happening. So, of course, you know that if you've been following me. If not, now's a great time to click on that subscribe button so that you get notified every time I post new content, which is each weekend and daily. So if you are part of my website or my Facebook or this YouTube channel, then you know that I pull a tarot card every day, give you a message for the day, and I sprinkle in typically a little bit of astrology knowledge as well. Plus, if you go out to my website, maraleeburnett.com, there you can, of course, book a session with me, because you do want to get prepared for this very complex new moon solar eclipse. And if not, you want to go out and read all the content, you can go back and review the full moon lunar eclipse video, because of course these are all still tied together. What's going on is part of a full story. Take a look at October's monthly horoscopes if you want to get prepped for that month's new moon and full moon. And then, of course, this is September, and we still have lots of time to go through here. And all of that is out there on my website for you. So become a member, and then you'll get notification when I do send out new content and get that posted. And you get a weekly summary of what's out there and what I've created for the week for you as well. So I hope to see some of you enjoying my sessions, for those that have already booked with me. And the fun's just going to keep on funning for the rest of this year. It's not going to slow down, but we do have some fated events going on still this week that we want to discuss. So with that, let us jump in and take a look at Monday, September 15th, which is already the middle of the month. People, we are 2 weeks away from getting our Halloween decorations out. And the holidays all are just starting, and it's unbelievable. I swear to God, I was just putting away my Christmas decorations. So this is just, it's unbelievable with all that's been going on this year, how it's also been going very quickly. So let's take a look here on Monday. And if you followed me, like I said last week, and if not, go back and watch last week's video, you saw us talking about the beginning of an extended conversation between Mars and Venus, so the lovers of the zodiac. And Venus is in the sign that Mars appreciates, Leo, fire, passion, and Mars happens to be in the sign that Venus rules. So one way this can show up is creating relationships and partnerships where there's cooperation between male and female energy. So that's very helpful, and it will actually be with us for most of this week. So we want to take advantage of it, do what we can to get along, to appreciate the opposite sex, to appreciate a different perspective, to appreciate the masculine as well as the feminine, and unite them in a cause. That's what this week is about. And of course, we've seen tremendous tragedy last week, both with school shootings involved. And so there's something that we need to come together and cooperate on, share the love, take some action in a loving way is a good way to take advantage of this energy. And then somewhere in your own chart, there's this cooperative aspect that is going on. So you want to look at, where do you have Mars in Libra and where do you have Venus in Leo? All right. That is one of the aspects. The one that I'm most concerned about, considering the level of volatility and violence that's been going on in the previous weeks, is this opposition between Mars in Libra and Chiron in Aries. So the opposition means there's two things that are at war, there's challenges, and this is what we want, Mars in Libra, versus what somebody else independently wants, and your needs are at odds with one another. Not because of some kind of a pain that was caused in the past. This person with this Chiron Aries energy is needing to heal, and as a result of that healing, maybe they want to leave a relationship and it's causing conflict. So whatever this is in your life, these are a few days, and you've probably maybe experienced this through the weekend. We're just getting past Mercury Cazimi. Mind-blowing events happen around a Mercury Cazimi, especially when it's in a sign of the Virgo. That's the part of a solar eclipse. So now it's the aftermath of those energies, and Mercury, speaking of, has gone past the sun, so it's been reborn, and it too is making a harsh angle back to Chiron in Aries, which is retrograde. And so there is information about a wound from the past. Maybe it's not that long ago. Then with either of these events that just occurred that were violent in nature, we may be learning more information, more of the story, more of the truth about what's been happening is being brought to the surface at this time. And as we go through the week, it is Mercury that will give us a preview about the eclipse. So this week, every day, tune in, pay attention, trust your gut, trust your intuition, because you're being shown what you have to let go of, what you have to release. And instead of being shocked and surprised by the event, by this ending, do the work. You know what it is most often that you need to get out of, move on from, move away from, if you haven't already. And if you haven't, then this week will be tougher. If you have, then you're starting to see more about why, because the new opportunity is starting to show itself to you as a result of whatever this was being let go of and released. All right. The other piece that could help with the healing is that Venus energy does speak in harmony with Chiron. So this is, again, that loving, healing energy I was speaking to. So it's almost like this woman, this feminine energy. It could be money that is used to try to dissolve this conflict between this Mars entity and Chiron. So, just another simple start to the week, no big deal. And as usual, we still see the minor triangle with that Pluto in Aquarius. We have Neptune at 0 degrees now in the sign of Aries. So it is going to spend its time here and then get back into Pisces as well, where Saturn retrograde is sitting. It's come off of its critical 29 degrees. So maybe there's a little less intensity, but we still have all the things to uncover as this retrograde continues. And then, of course, we're seeing now Uranus is getting more situated in its retrograde. It's not spewing out so much energy, but we do have to review the facts and that pay closer attention to AI. There's a lot to uncover as Uranus moves back through this degree in the sign of Gemini. All right, that is Monday. Let's take a quick look at Tuesday. And here, as we get into Tuesday, as I mentioned, still going to see this positive connection between Venus and Mars. In fact, they're moving forward together. So now at 26 degrees. But that also means that the discussion with Chiron is even more intense. So if there's going to be any kind of event, any more political unrest. We're likely to see it happen on Tuesday because of the fact that the moon strong at home in its sign of Cancer, sitting here with Jupiter also in Cancer, are creating this T square of energy. So I always like to say this is a mountain of pressure, and there's an emotional explosiveness because of the moon being at the top of this T square or mountain of pressure. So there's a lot of emotional tension and explosiveness on Tuesday, and it can involve home and families. And we just saw it last week. We could see retaliatory attacks. It's just a good week to be safe and to not instigate more challenges with the energy that's out there, and make sure that you're always aware of your surroundings because it just is a very volatile week. So just be careful. And as I mentioned, we still have that Venus trying to spread and share the love. So that is helpful. But this war of words tension, it escalates because here we have now Mercury in Virgo, and it's in opposition to Saturn in Pisces. Now, Mercury is the messenger of the gods. So if you imagine the play or the scene in front of you, it's like Mercury has this message from Saturn that it got a while ago. It's supposed to be doing something about it or with it from this old man, and this young startup is like, I don't agree with your messaging and I don't want to deliver it. And so there's some kind of conflict between this older person and this younger person that we may see show up in the world stage this week as well. So again, a rather intense day, and you want to make sure that you're keeping your mind grounded, right? Mercury in Virgo is saying, slow down. This is earth energy. And while Mercury loves to fly around the sky quickly, this is a reminder to slow down and not get caught up in the drama, and definitely don't add to the drama. So that is our Tuesday. As we move ahead and get a look at Wednesday, remember how I said that 29 degrees, very intense, and the 29 degrees where we're going to have this eclipse. Well, today Mercury is giving us a preview. So Wednesday, if something is taken away from you, some opportunity, some job, some friendship, whatever it is, do not mourn it. Do not get caught up in worrying or stressing about it. Let it go, because it's meant to be. This is destiny, right? Eclipses remove something from our life because we haven't been able to see the truth, right? The eclipse blocks out the experience of what's been going on. There's a darkness, and it's in that darkness that people can either hide the truth or some can be exposing it. I always recommend, if you're trying to do anything during an eclipse as far as manifesting, that you're just manifesting what you can release, what bad habits you can let go of. And especially we're talking health things. So health things may be exposed today, information about health, because we're talking about Virgo, and also any kind of detail, any kind of fact. That's what's going to be exposed today, but it causes conflict. So this person who's sharing this information is really ticking off this older leader, this established person with this reputation it could be somebody that is religious in nature with this Saturn in Pisces energy, and it could be religious institutions. So again, we're just in this very uncomfortable energy that can bring up more incidents involving schools. So we just need to be careful and aware this week. And if you have children in school and they notice somebody who's really upset or stressed out, this is the time to just get help and speak up. And don't, like I said, get sucked into any drama yourself, because it is not going to be helpful. But again, we are now seeing the preview of what's coming on the new moon solar eclipse on Sunday. So be aware, be prepared, and journal, write your dreams. There's some very important information that is being shared through the conflict today. All right, let us move to Thursday. So here we are on Thursday, and we've been seeing this kite formation, which I always say is something that we have an opportunity to lift up, right? A kite can fly high and give us a big win as long as we learn how to navigate the conflict. So now we have that Mercury energy just entering into the sign of Libra. So this is something to do with contracts, with the law, with connecting to others for things to be fair and balanced. It's relationships, it's marriages, and it is youth with that Mercury energy. And then now we have Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries. And again, so we are still seeing this religious aspect that is a part of this conflict, because Neptune rules Pisces, of course. So already Mercury's been fighting with Saturn, now Mercury's fighting with Neptune. And so there's a back and forth dialogue, but instead of each side digging in and fighting with one another, now's the time to figure out how to meet in the middle. Because the tension, when we pay attention to really what it's about, is what opens up a really big opportunity. And that opportunity still comes through our mindset in what's fair, what's just. And that's because Mercury in Libra then speaks in harmony with Pluto in Aquarius, we the people, and with Uranus in Gemini. So this is a grand air trine. What we think is really important, new big ideas, new opportunities, new agreements, those are all possible as a way of dissolving the conflict. We all have to be willing to mediate and meet in the middle. Adding to more intensity of the day is, speaking of another 29-degree event, is now Venus in the sign of Leo. So passions are running very high, maybe women in general, mothers of children, because of that Leo aspect, which rules children. There's something very emotional going on, and the moon joins in with Venus today, adding to the emotional reaction to something that has occurred this week. So it's, as I mentioned, it's still a very, very intense week ahead. There are opportunities. We just cannot dig in and escalate anything that is in your world this week. You really want to play the peacekeeper. That's Thursday. And then we're going to move ahead here to Friday. And on Friday is when we see Venus entering into the sign of Virgo. And I kind of like how the moon has been assisting, right? It's like here guiding Venus as she leaves Leo and enters into the sign of Virgo. And neither the moon nor Venus is especially great at using their gifts in the sign of Virgo, but instead of being nitpicky, instead of trying to be perfect, instead of trying to control everything, Venus and the moon here are saying, give yourself a little bit of grace. And also keep in mind, it was August, almost a month ago now, where we had the first new moon in Virgo that happened to happen at 0 degrees. So as I mentioned before when we talked about that August new moon in Virgo, whatever new beginning there is for you, it is tied to this eclipse. So you saw something, a brand new opportunity, a brand new possibility, which is what 0 degrees is about. It's a complete reset, something you've never experienced before. So you have this exposure to something new, and Venus is beauty and love and money, and the moon is our emotions and our feelings, and they're together in the sign of Virgo, which is a very healing moment. So there can be something to heal, but we've got to make a change because of the fact that these two will be squaring with Uranus and Gemini. We've got to change our minds. What's interesting about these two signs is they are ruled by Mercury. And of course, Mercury's part of that grand air trine with Uranus and Pluto. So this is definitely something we have to trust our emotions and our intuition about. And this is also activating the yod. So your mission, your quest, what have you been working on since that August new moon? Because now with the moon and Venus activating the 0 degree of Virgo, they're also activating the yod that started back then, was activated again by Mercury, was activated again by the sun. And now the final activation for this year is happening with Venus and the moon. So this is probably the most gentle activation that we're getting between this in conjunct to Pluto and the in conjunct to Saturn and Neptune. So there is something about helping, being of service to others that is part of our mission, the thing that we need to accomplish in order to heal, in order to bring closure to something. So it's another really big, important day that requires change, that requires some sacrifice, and that requires letting go of old ways of thinking in order to really make a difference. We have to approach our current conflict in a completely unique and different way. So that's Friday. As we move to Saturday, we're starting the setup of our intense eclipse energy. So we still have the conflict. The moon's moved on a bit because, of course, it has to get next to the sun in order to have the eclipse moment. And we still see Venus here in conjunct with Pluto, squaring to Uranus, in conjunct still. So we're still seeing the yod with Venus. So this is women in particular, maybe the ones, women in leadership roles, maybe the ones that have this really important mission now. But it's a woman that maybe you wouldn't expect to step up and be willing to do this. And it's women in general who may feel like they're called to do something that we're still seeing that energy. And then things get really intense because of the fact, yet again, another 29 degree activation happens on Saturday with Mars in the sign of Libra. So, Mars is a warrior. Mars is an attacker. There can be an attack on justice. There can be an attack in relationships. Disagreements can get really volatile. It's just an intensity, but it's also a test. So it is for you to fight for things to be fair and balanced when it comes to the law, when it comes to justice, when it comes to marriage. This can be a fight about marriage equality that is going on in some way this weekend, but there will be a fight. There will be a test. The scales of justice should remain balanced, and if they're not, something is going to be done about it this weekend. Injustice is not going to be the winner or the outcome of this solar eclipse, in my opinion. So we see that on Saturday. We also now see the sun in Virgo is having the big conflict with Saturn. So these are two very big egos in the world that are in conflict with one another. The sun is this bright, shining star, very earthy and grounded energy. Saturn is somebody who is with this Piscean energy, maybe somebody who is unwell, mentally unfit. There's some kind of conflict going on between those two energies. Pisces, what's hidden and unseen. Virgo is very physical, right? It's earth energy. So there's the physical world, there is the spiritual world, and there's big conflict. And the sun is highlighting the conflict because we need to see it and recognize it and understand it. And then it's whatever the basis of this conflict is, that's what's going to get eclipsed out so that we can move on from it. It can't continue. So that's a bit of an, intense energy. And we still see Venus, like I said, square with Uranus. So there's still conflict and change, intensity. Whenever Venus has to speak with Pluto, it's uncomfortable. There's uncomfortable dialogue going around as a result of this conversation. All right. Anything else I want to point out on this day? Nope. So we're just going to dive in maybe one more piece, and that's just the fact that this is a partial solar eclipse because of the fact that the south node isn't close to the new moon. It's sitting back here at 18 degrees. So on Saturday, we'll have another little preview of the message of what needs to be let go, what needs to be released, what lessons from the past, what karma do we have, are we attached to. This is basically the conversation between the moon and its fated points, which the nodes are points that are surrounding the physical moon. They're not there, but they create fated events as they're crossed. And so prior to the actual solar eclipse today, the moon talks with the nodes. Of course, if it's talking to the south node, it's opposing that north node, and it's the south. It's where we've been and resolving the problems in this area or learning from them that opens the door to the future, which was shown to us at the time of the lunar eclipse, which will be 2 weeks ago by now. So it's a tuning into our intuition, trusting it, trusting our gut, and trusting what we're being shown, right? Because still, Virgo, details, facts. That's what's showing up on Saturday that we can't ignore. And if we've been ignoring these facts, this information that's been around for a long time, associated with the past, but we keep ignoring it and covering it up, it's not going to stay covered up much longer. That's the work of the eclipse. All right, so with that, I'm going to give you just this brief view of this eclipse that happens on Sunday. And as you can see, the sun and the moon are together in the sign of Virgo. They're at 29 degrees, while the south node's back here at 18. That's why it's not close enough for this to be a full eclipse. It's just partial. But the intensity is still there because of the fact that we're again at a 29th degree, a critical degree. What you've learned between the August new moon and now, 28 and a half days ago, is what you're being tested on. So you were shown something, you were given an opportunity, and then you were given a month to do the work, to get ready, to study, to practice, to get comfortable with the thought of this new thing, this new opportunity that can really be life-changing. That's what eclipses are. Eclipses create life-changing events. Even if they don't happen to us directly, there are things that are going on right now in the world that are extremely intense, that may be affecting individuals, but they do also affect us in some ways, the collective. And that's why these historically are something that can be feared or revered, seen as a changing turning point in the world and in our own personal lives. So I personally have definitely experienced eclipse moments where I went, dang, and it was out of my control. Something was lost, something was taken from me, that there wasn't anything I do, no matter how I would try to negotiate, right, with the world, with the energy. It wasn't meant for me anymore, and I had to let it go. I'd learned all I could learn. And so that meant it was time to move on to the next thing. And it feels frustrating in the moment. And a lot of times it's even years before we realize, wow, if I had stayed on that path, then I wouldn't have seen this great opportunity that's now being presented to me. So even though it can be crunchy and uncomfortable, it's worth it in the end. You have to trust that there's a plan and it's bigger and grander than you. But that doesn't mean it isn't intense, because of course, as the sun and moon unite, they are opposed. The Saturn-Neptune energy, both are in retrograde. So while this new beginning wants you to move forward, it's not without paying your dues for the past or learning lessons from the past. It's not without remembering what the dream was that you had for yourself and where you've gotten lost and gave it up, maybe, that you're being reminded of in some way. Because we still have this kite formation, we still have this big opportunity, we still have this invisible support system with this Uranus, Pluto, Neptune energy. We can see Saturn in the sky, but we can't see these outer planets. We just have to trust that they're out there trying to create change in the collective, because things are not working as we would hope them to work at this time across so many different avenues. So it is from this tension, this opportunity, this will end up being at the fall equinox as the sun moves next week into the sign of Libra, where we see what can change and what action we have to take. But first, something will have to be removed, something will have to be eclipsed out, and it'll be where we have 29 degrees of Virgo in your chart. And the opposite house where you have this Pisces energy, that's giving you an idea of where the tension is coming from that helps you make this big change. So I'm going to do that separate video, so I'll break this down again in that video, and then I'll give you a breakdown by sign. But between now and then watching that video, get your chart out and take a look specifically at what house this 29 degrees falls in. Because while I do this for whole sign houses to make it simple, I follow Placidus. So where I have 29 degrees Virgo might actually be the next house versus what I'm going to describe for you in that video. So if you know for sure, like this chart here, they have, this is an intercepted house that you only get with Placidus, which is a very long conversation. I won't get into it, but this person, well, I'll get into it a little bit. This person has a major opportunity to realize this energy that's been stuck and trapped or congested, maybe their whole life. They're going to have some big breakthrough and some kind of an epiphany for how to access it. So if their health has been something they've struggled with their whole life, suddenly through this eclipse, there's this big aha moment and they're able to understand how to heal. Because both Virgo and Pisces have to do with healing. Just one example. Depends on the personal planets being activated as well, or what your chart looks like. So all that to say, make sure you go to a free website like astro.com, get your chart made, birth date, birthplace, birth time, and know what your rising sign is so that you can tell specifically for you where this will occur. because when I do this for Capricorn, it's going to look different than this chart that says it's in the 8th house. If I do it from Capricorn, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's the 9th house for Capricorns, but this person's chart shows it's in the 8th. So that's why I want you to make sure that you're ready next week with your exact chart. So when I'm telling you what the potential things are that are going to happen, you can adjust and listen to the sign with that house to help you best prepare. And the last time we had this was 2006, but of course, we didn't have all of the other things going on in 2006. We didn't have the opposition with Neptune and Saturn. We didn't have the outer planets where they're at. We didn't have almost all the planets at the early or last degrees of the signs. So while there are things and themes that can repeat, the experience is still going to be very, very unique. And so I want to do my best to help you be prepared. And so I will do that in that next video. So watch for that link and that to show up a little later in the week. So we're a little bit closer to the eclipse and I can capture anything else that's been going on in this crazy week ahead. All right. So that is all I want to talk about for this week. Let's take a quick peek ahead to next week. And here we're going to see a lot of changes next week. We're going to see Mars move into its other favorite place, which is Scorpio, because it's its other domicile. Ruler of Aries, but it was initially the ruler of Scorpio before we identified Pluto. So when it's here, we have 6 weeks of extreme intensity, a lot of death, rebirth, transformation. Those will be the topics that will be top of mind. And we have another yacht. So there is something intense beginning here on the fall equinox as we have Mars here speaking with Neptune and Uranus to create yet another mission from God. Especially if you have planets at the 0-1 degrees, you guys have been getting worked out. And then we also see now the sun moves into the Libra. That's what creates fall and equal parts day and night and balance, right? Because it's the sign of Libra. That's why we have it here. And it activates the grand air trine that we saw previously activated by Mercury. And so here we have Pluto and Uranus and the sun now all working in harmony to provide some big opportunity, some big communication, some big announcement is possible. And whenever you get an opportunity during a grand trine, you always say yes. So we'll talk about that more. So then that's just Monday. So it's still intense. Like I've been saying, the energy is still intense. We still have lots of opportunities, but we also have lots of intensity. We have lots of conflict. I do worry about Mars being squared with Pluto for more violence. So we'll break it all down next week after you watch the eclipse video and just do our best to navigate through the conflict, through the challenges. Do our best to not add fuel to the fire. Don't be the person that adds on, yeah, you deserved it kind of comments. It doesn't help anything. Things happen. They happen for a reason. Bad things happen for a reason. Tragedies happen for a reason. Eventually, after enough of them, we come to our senses and learn what the reason is. But, we're stubborn. We're human. And it takes sometimes a long time for us to break free of a way of thinking. So this week's going to do a lot to help us become aware and awake. And it won't be easy work. It will be intense. But just know I'm here every day to guide you with a little positivity and insight on, how to manage through it. And while I give you examples Of course, I'm not a psychic, so I can't tell you exactly. But if you go back and listen to last week's video, I said that Wednesday was going to be a very intense day. There's something that would be eclipsed because of the fact that Mercury was activating that opposition eclipse point that was a part of the full moon lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces. So the energies are very active and intense this week, more than they have been, even, believe it or not. So I just want you to stay grounded, stay positive, focus on what you can control, and don't add to the drama. It's my best advice. All right, guys. I'm sending you happy healing thoughts, positivity always, and let me know in the comments what's been coming up for you, what's been going on, and let me know how I can help. All right, thank you for liking, commenting, sharing my work. Thank you to those who work with me. I really enjoy it, and I will talk with you on the next video where we do the breakdown by sign for the new moon intense solar eclipse. All right, guys, take care.